no creature which is not destined for the supreme goal, as there is no river which is not winding its way to the sea. Meher Baba. Avtar Meher Baba ki Jai. Thanks to beloved Baba and Jai Baba to all of you. Yesterday, what we did was characteristics of different kingdoms. We saw the stone in a recumbent position, bird in this position, animals in this position, recumbent and vertical, and then finally human being in the upright position. So basically, we will see even in the human stage that all progress comes through the experiencing of opposites, male, female, high, low, rich, poor, healthy, sick, easterner, westerner, so on and so forth. So that's the scheme of things. We also did yesterday that along with the evolution of consciousness, as more and more consciousness evolves, it needs more and more complex forms or medium in order to experience the impressions of the last form dropped. We've done all that yesterday. This is very visible because it is gross. But Baba says that simultaneously, along with the development of the gross forms, there is also the development of the subtle form and the development of the mental form, which we are not very conscious of, which we are not aware of. It is only in the first human form that the consciousness is whole and complete, with all the three bodies, which means the gross, subtle and the mental bodies, absolutely complete. We've seen that yesterday. So now let us go ahead with, we are on page number
31.
Page 31.
It is but natural that together with the evolution of higher and greater consciousness of soul, the evolution of the finite, subtle form of soul also takes place to fortify the soul with greater, finite energy to incline the consciousness of the more and more gross conscious soul to identify itself with higher and higher types of finite gross forms evolved by the impressions of the last lower finite gross form.
We have seen this mechanism, I'll repeat it, in a particular form. What is a particular form? Any form. Let's say animal form. Last animal form. I'm repeating it. Yesterday we did that. The last animal form is nothing but a consolidated mold of the impressions of the last but one animal form dropped. So when that form was dropped, or rather when that form was already in existent, at that time, the consciousness was focused on the form. Once that form is dropped, there is no form to focus or centralize the consciousness on. So now the consciousness is focused on the impressions. And these impressions, which Baba calls it residual impressions, become the mold of the next higher form. And this is how it continues like that. So Baba uses the word most first, most last, most next in order to let us understand that this is how the progression takes place. Now here Baba says, I'll repeat this paragraph, it is but natural that together with the evolution of higher and greater consciousness of the soul, when Baba talks about evolution, he talks about the evolution of consciousness. And he also says that the evolution of form is nothing but a byproduct of the factory of the evolution of consciousness. So the important thing is the evolution of consciousness, and the form follows consciousness, or consciousness leads the form. the evolution of the finite subtle form of soul also takes place. So simultaneously with the evolution of consciousness, followed by evolution of gross forms, simultaneously, but unbeknown to us, indirectly, unconsciously, there is an evolution of the subtle form as well as the mental form. Takes place to fortify the soul with greater finite energy. Because in the next birth, it is going to have a bit more advanced form. And in order to be able to function in that more advanced form, it needs to fortify the consciousness, give energy to the consciousness of the soul. Energy to incline the consciousness of the more and more gross conscious soul to identify. To incline means to move, to push, to make that possible. To identify itself with higher and higher types of finite gross forms evolved by the impressions of the last lower finite gross form.
Similarly, the evolution of the finite mental form of the soul also takes place simultaneously to accommodate, retain, and reflect the increasingly innumerable varied impressions gained and gathered by the evolution of greater and greater consciousness of the soul.
In other words, simultaneously with the energy body becoming more and more advanced, the mental body or the mind also now evolves in order to accommodate the innumerable finite,
Varied.
innumerable and varied samskara. It needs space, so it is accommodating that way. The thought that comes to me, just a small baby eats, and when he eats, what happens? It grows. When it grows, the stomach also comes out. So in order to accommodate more and more food, the stomach keeps coming out. Most of our stomachs are out, so I'm just...
not Ruchit.
Okay, not Rochit. All right. All right. So automatically, the subtle body, in order to have more energy, the mental body, in order to accommodate the innumerable and varied types of samskaras or impressions, also gradually becomes larger and larger. Yeah.
Thus, it is that when the soul tends to identify itself with varied species of vegetable forms, the evolved finite subtle form and the evolved mental form of the soul begin to show greater and visible signs of the soul's association with its much evolved finite subtle form and finite mental form in the shape of varied rapid cycles of changes taking place in vegetable forms and also in the shape of vegetable forms showing first signs of peculiar, varied and meaningful tendencies of self-preservation and survival of the fittest.
So we have seen that in the vegetable form, that is the form which is, yesterday we did half animate, half inanimate. So life forms has come over there. And then we have also seen there are certain plants, if you go to touch, they will just close. There are certain plants which will keep on shifting their face, the flowers, towards sunlight. So in other words, there is the energy body has now evolved. Even creepers, even creepers, So in other words, they have now developed a sign, what is called of self-preservation and survival of the fittest. So that is how gradually, in a very, very gradual process, the subtle body and the mental body starts evolving from the vegetable kingdom.
In the worm, bird and fish forms, this tendency of the finite mental form of the soul is translated gradually and steadily into the shape of instinct until in the animal form, this instinct is fully manifested as one of the finite aspects of the finite mental form of the soul.
So many a times we say, though I instinctively did that, it's very common for us to say. But Baba says that instincts belong to the animal kingdom. The intellect belongs to the human beings. And then Baba goes on to say, beyond intellect, there is inspiration, there is intuition, there is insight, illumination, and then realization. So this is how it progresses. So here Baba says that you can see instinct. Now, the most common example of an instinct that I have found is there's a mosquito just around over here, and I'm taking my hand to beat it, and most of the time I miss it, it will fly. That means the mosquito has the instinct that something is going to slap me, and so it flies away. So the instincts start developing from the worm, the fish, the bird, even birds for that matter. You would have seen the moment you come closer, there's a sense of survival, so it will just fly away. Why? These are all instincts which are fully developed in the first animal form. The instincts belong to the animal kingdom, the intellect belongs to the human beings, and as we evolve, that means evolutionary process, this intellect itself changes into inspiration, intuition, insight, illumination, and then finally realization. We'll come to that later when we discuss in details. Yeah.
Gradually, this instinct is further and completely transformed into intellect, this being the highest finite aspect of manifestation of the mental form in the human form of the gross conscious human soul experiencing the gross world.
So in other words, gradually, instinct transforms itself into intellect in the human form, and the intellect is supposed to be the highest aspect of the finite mental aspect of the human form. We give a lot of importance to intellect, but then Baba would always say, in many, many ways, Baba would say that the intellect is not destined to enter into the bedroom of the beloved. In order to, enter the bedroom of the beloved, the intellect has to be kept aside and you have to go with the heart. So there are many such statements from beloved Baba where he doesn't be mean in a sense intellect. What he says is that intellect is not the be all and end all. You need to go beyond the intellect that way.
So it is that only in human form are the subtle body and the mental body fully developed, wherefore the soul, associating itself consciously with human form, is, so to speak, fully equipped with the human body, subtle body, and mental body together with full consciousness of the gross.
In other words, God realization can be had only in the human form, because the human form is the last and final product where the consciousness is whole and complete, full, and where all the three bodies are fully developed, the gross, the subtle, and the mental bodies. And only in the human form can anyone experience God realization. There are exceptions to the rule where the avatar or the perfect master may give realization to any species. That's beside the point. The general thing is that in order to have God realization, one should be in the human form. After the body is dropped, you will not experience God realization, because you have to be in a human body in order to experience infinite knowledge, infinite power, and infinite bliss. Yesterday we discussed about moksha, mukti, liberation, salvation. That's a totally different matter, because in God realization you experience all the three aspects, power, bliss, and knowledge, whereas in mukti or moksha, your experience is only of infinite bliss, eternal. So that's the difference which Baba had said.
Although the soul has gained consciousness in human form and thus experiences the gross world, yet the gross conscious human soul is unconscious of the subtle body and so cannot experience the subtle world. It is also unconscious of the mental body and thus cannot experience the mental world.
Yesterday again we did that although my consciousness is focused on the gross, my experiences are purely gross. Although I do use the energy of the subtle world and the mind of the mental world, unconsciously, indirectly, without realizing how I am using it. I have control over my actions, and that is why Baba has given a lot of importance to actions. Sorry. I may get any kind of thoughts, dirty, ugly, filthy, vulgar, or even very lofty, very good. I do not know where these thoughts are coming from. Theoretically, I know that they originate in my past samskaras. But am I able to manipulate my thoughts? Am I able to control my thoughts? Am I able to read somebody's thoughts? I am able to transfer my thoughts to somebody else? No. Why? Because I am not in the mental world. So that is why Baba says many times, many people feel very let down by the the thoughts that keep humming all the way, and that is why Baba says, okay, let the thoughts come and go. Just be a witness to the thoughts, just be a silent spectator to what is happening in the mental region of your being. Do not be concerned about it, do not be worried about it. Be very conscious about not putting them into action. Why? Because action is in our domain. Action, I have a control, I can raise my hands, I can lower my hand, but thoughts, I do not have full control. With some aspects of maybe meditation or whatever, we may be able to a certain extent, monitor and control the thoughts. But not, I don't know the thoughts as much as I know the gross world and my gross body. So always keep a vigil over our actions is what Baba would advocate.
Even though the soul has only gross consciousness and is unconscious of the subtle and mental, it does work through the subtle and mental bodies, although indirectly on the gross plane. Even though the gross conscious human soul is unconscious of its subtle and mental bodies and their respective subtle and mental worlds, and therefore does not realize the energy of the subtle and the mind of the mental, yet it can use energy through various gross aspects of energy, such as nuclear energy, and it can use mind through various gross aspects of mind, such as desires, emotions, and thoughts. Of these, desires are the predominant aspect of the mind.
We did this again yesterday also, that those who are in the gross world are not conscious. I'm using the word, they use the subtle and the mental, are not conscious of the subtle and the mental world. Those who are living in the subtle world and are experiencing the subtle world and are conscious of the subtle world do not experience the gross and the mental world. Those who are in the mental world do not experience the gross and the